Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, Arsenal correspondent at Goal, back with you once again for another one of these videos. It's Q&A time. For this video, I promised I would do one of these again, probably a fair few days ago now, but it's been pretty busy. I haven't managed to get around to the time, but I've fixed myself a little bit of time now, and I will get around to your questions that you've all been sending in. I asked a question on social media probably about a week ago now, something like that, and a lot of you responded, firing in your questions and your opinions, comments about all things Arsenal, and so I will spend the next, I don't know, half an hour or so going through those and trying to answer as best as I can, and just to update you on what's happening at the club at the moment. Before we start with that, usual message. Thank you very much for your support on this still relatively new YouTube channel. Many of you subscribed already, but if you haven't subscribed, there is the button down there. Please do so. As I always say, I'll continue to update you and provide more of these videos. And hopefully, once football starts up again, as I always say, you'll see a lot more interesting backdrops than that wall in the corner of my bedroom here in my house. And hopefully, we're not too far away from some sort of football starting up again. It's certainly not going to be football as we know it, but football nonetheless. I'm sure you've all been watching the Bundesliga, and that appears to be edging closer to happening in England. Arsenal are back in small group training now. That started to happen on Monday, and yeah, the players are back now in their groups of maximum of 5, working at London Colney as they prepare for the next phase of Project Restart. So, touch wood, we are edging closer to seeing Arsenal back in action again. Probably in just over a month, 6 weeks' time, something like that. But we're getting there. And I think Arsenal, the players heading back to London Colney certainly is a major step forward in the right direction in that regards. And anyway, let's get going, shall we? First of your questions from Peter Host comes in. He asks about my view on KSC Kroenke's financial support at this time. Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of people have been bringing it up and talking about it on social media in terms of exactly what Kroenke and KSC are doing during this crisis to sort of help Arsenal. Obviously, we know that that there is extra financial support coming from the Kroenkes towards the club at the moment to sort of help soften the financial impact that coronavirus is having, which is a massive financial impact. But what that isn't, I think a lot of people have sort of misunderstood it a little bit. Is he saying that he's going to be giving 50-70 million for the transfer kitty this summer? That's absolutely not going to be the case. So the financial support that Stan Kroenke's giving is basically, he's almost underwriting things and saying, look, I will cover, if things get really, really bad, I will cover things. So he's not exactly putting his own money in and laying it on the table saying, look, here it is. This is how we're going to get through this crisis. This is how we're going to continue to operate. It's by me just ploughing in a load of my own money to keep topping things up. That's not the case. Arsenal are still kind of working to their self-sustainable model. They're still, at the moment, they've got the cash reserves that they're ploughing through at the moment because they're losing about £25 million a month revenue with each month the longer this goes on. And what Kroenke's basically doing, KSC basically doing, is saying, look, if things get really, really bad, we'll support the club. We'll keep things ticking over. We'll try and keep people in their jobs and things like that. So they're not ploughing a load of cash into the club in terms of ensuring that Arsenal don't have to eat into their cash reserves. That's not the case because Arsenal are eating into their cash reserves. Kroenke's not whacking down a load of his own money, and he's certainly not going to be whacking down a load of his own money for the club to use in the transfer market this summer. It's just not the case. So what the financial support KSC are offering is basically backup support, saying we will cover certain costs. We will, we will support the club if needs be, but it's not exactly a case of them just waving the money in the air saying we're the saviours. Far from it. Harry asked, regarding Arsenal's recruitment in South America, how reliant have Arsenal been on brokers, especially Andre Curry, when it comes to negotiation for players to join the club? It's an interesting one. This, Arsenal are very active in the South American market. Doesn't really surprise you when you look at Edu, who's now technical director, and signed Pablo Mari. Obviously, came in for Flamengo, and Andre was was one of the brokers agents involved in that deal, but he's not certainly specifically the only man Arsenal are using. I mean, you've got Arturo Canales as well, who's very strong in South America. Raul himself is very strong in South America. He's got the contacts with Andre and Arturo and Kia Joorabchian, of course. Again, man who's made his fortune and his way into football with his dealings in South America. So Arsenal got a lot of key big playing agents who they're using at the moment and working very closely with, and they've all got very strong South American contacts. And even Francis Cagiao, who's head of international recruitment at Arsenal, he's got very strong contacts in South America as well. He was the man who led the move to bring in Gabriel Martinelli last summer. So they've got a lot of strong contacts that they use. That's how they're exploring the South American market with Vedu as well. Obviously, so it's not just one man. It's plenty of them, and they're relying on these brokers. They're using them a lot. But as I said, they've also got their own scouting network. So it's not just about agents, although that is a very key part of Arsenal's transfer strategy now since Raul has come in. He's got these contacts that he forged at Barcelona, and he does use them. He likes to use them. We've seen that in some of the dealings that have already happened. But Arsenal's still also using their scouting network in South America, as we saw with Francis Cagiao. And his drive to sign Gabriel Martinelli. So they're still using a lot of different avenues. It's not just one man. Space Viking asks, why do Arsenal seem to struggle to produce defenders from the academy, especially at centre back, bringing through loads of mids and forwards, but so few defenders? Interesting one, and very, very much is very true as well. I did a piece on Goal a couple of weeks ago now, looking at the sort of best young talents coming through over the next few years who could potentially save Arsenal an awful lot of money in the transfer market, which will be very key at this time with finances so stretched because of coronavirus. And I didn't put in one defender, and a lot of people flagged that up to me. Where are the defenders? And it's true, they don't really produce. I mean, Zech Medley was the one that people were talking about, but I'm yet to be convinced by Medley, and people that I've spoken to, I'm not sure there's a lot that really believe Medley's actually going to go on and make it at Arsenal. Harry Clarke is one centre back, used to be a central midfielder. A lot of people like him, think he's a solid centre back. He's had a good season this year, playing a lot for the under 23s, and so he's certainly one. But it does look like an area. But I'm not sure it's just Arsenal, to be honest. I think you look at a lot of, certainly in England, a lot of the young talent that's been produced in the last few years, and the talent that's coming through now. It's all those similar sort of players. Wide attacking forwards, got loads of them. So many of them come through. Forwards as well at Arsenal. You think of that supply line at the moment from Eddie Nketiah, who's in there at the moment. You've got John Jules just below him. You've got Balogun as well coming through. So a lot of those young strikers, as I said about the wingers, Nelson, Saka, people like that. You've got Aziz, the midfielder, coming through. But defenders, not too much. I think that's certainly an area that Arsenal would like to work on in the next few years. But I think Harry Clarke is certainly one that they hope might well start pushing through in the next couple of years, and at least try to start knocking on the door of the first team. Let's see what we got next. Evan, I've just talked about a couple of these players, says, is there any plans being put in place to introduce players like Aziz or Balogun into the first team, or possibly loan them out? I think with both of them, I wouldn't be surprised if they have one more year in 23s next season with those two. I don't think we'll see them really smashing on the door of the first team. Maybe in the League Cup you could see a couple of appearances, or Europa League if Arsenal qualify in the group stages. But I wouldn't be surprised if they have another season in 23s before then getting the loan out. I think next year with the Arsenal youngsters, I think you'll probably see John Jules head out on loan again. Obviously, he had his injury-disrupted time at Lincoln in the second half of this season. I think it will definitely go out on loan again. But in doing so, that will free up a space in the 23s. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Balogun having a full year as like the main forward for the 23s next season. And Aziz as well, because he's still very, very young, Aziz. He's really, really still a kid. As talented as he is and as highly rated as he is within the Arsenal academy, he's still young. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see probably another season of 23s football for those two before they head out on loan. Paul says, is it ridiculous that there's speculation about spending money signing new players when our current players have agreed a voluntary pay cut? I certainly think, Paul, that the expectation of certain deals happening this summer, and it's not just with Arsenal fans, it's with all fans. I think it surprises me an awful lot. It's like people have got their head in their sands a little bit when it comes to just how serious this crisis is and what it's having on the effect it's having on finances in football at all levels. You know, from the very lower leagues to the top leagues. You know, it's really hitting clubs. Like I said, Arsenal are losing around £25 million a month at the moment with what's going on. And next season could all be played behind closed doors. There's a very real chance of that happening. And that, you know, that's 25% of Arsenal's annual revenue comes from matchday revenue. And suddenly that tap's been turned off. And then it's not just that, it's the knock-on effects that has on commercial partners, commercial money, everything like that is, you know, it's a huge. You know, the Arsenal Supporters Trust said that Arsenal could lose. They've worked it out, done all the finances. Reckon Arsenal could lose up to £144 million next year. So that's why you've got to lower your expectations when it comes to the transfer market. I think Arsenal will try and do deals. There'll be lots of negotiations with other clubs. I think, you know, swap deals, that sort of thing. Trying to be clever in the transfer market, but just going out and spending millions upon millions, it's just not going to happen this summer. You know, I'm not saying that there won't be any moves in the transfer market. There will be. There has to be. And clubs will have to get clever. You look at Barcelona and Juventus at the moment. You know, they're in regular contact over possible swap deals with their players and trying to get things done. I think that's what you're going to see happening more and more, and that's what you'll see with Arsenal. Thomas Partey, for example, you know, a player Arsenal absolutely want to sign. Thomas Partey, from the word we're getting, is quite interested in a move to Arsenal as well. Obviously, as a release clause of 50 million. You know, in years gone by, that, you know, wouldn't have been out of the realm of possibility for Arsenal, but right now it's very difficult for them to do anything like that because of the situation that the club finds itself in. But then there's the Alexander Lacazette situation, a player that Atletico Madrid like, and have always liked, and a player Arsenal may well be willing to let go if they can get something done, especially if Aubameyang signs his new contract. So there is a possible way there of exploring some sort of deal with Atletico. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that, you know, that's the sort of thing you're going to see more and more of in this transfer market, not just this summer, but in future windows as well, because this is a long-term thing. This, you know, the financial implications of the coronavirus aren't going to disappear like that. This is going to go on for a good few seasons yet. And so clubs are going to have to start getting clever in the transfer market. And I think certainly for the near future, what we've seen and what we've become used to in the transfer market is going to be a thing in the past now. We are not going to be seeing those sort of deals happening because very few, only the select few, you know, the Manchester Cities, the Paris Saint-Germains of this world, the commercial giants like Manchester United and, you know, Real Madrid, Barcelona, are going to be able to really splash the cash. And I'm not even sure all of those clubs will be able to do it immediately. I think maybe a couple of windows down the line. I think you're possibly looking at just Man City and Paris Saint-Germain. They're going to be totally immune, really, from this financial crisis. But for Arsenal, it's going to be difficult. They're going to have to really work hard on the deals they're going to do, and they're going to have to come up with some creative ways of getting things done. So I think, yeah, it's unrealistic, Paul. It's ridiculous to see some of the speculation going around, but not all of it, because, as I said, there is still going to be a market. There are still deals to be done. It's just a case of how clubs manage to get them done. BS18 says, what's going on with Maitland-Niles? Seems he's fallen out of favour with management. I mean, he has. There's no doubt about it. You know, there's behind certainly things happening on the training pitch that Mikel Arteta hasn't been impressed with Maitland-Niles. Because there's no way you don't look at Socrates, who was before the football was, you know, suspended because of coronavirus. Socrates was playing at right back, and there's no way you can look at Socrates and Maitland-Niles at right back and think that Socrates is a better option. He's not. It's just not. You know, he can't get forward. It doesn't happen. Maitland-Niles has shown time and time again that he can make a real impact playing down the right. And when Arteta first arrived, Maitland-Niles was great in his first few games, and Arteta's admitted this when he's asked a question about it. Is certainly things. Ainsley is not doing enough on the training pitch to warrant a place in the team at the moment, and Arteta's been bang on that since the moment he walked in. Not just with Maitland-Niles, with other players as well. You know, if you're not doing it on the training pitch, if you're not showing the right attitude, if you're not hitting the level of demands that Arteta expects, then you're not going to be playing, and that's the situation Maitland-Niles finds himself in at the moment. Will he go in this summer because of it? I think, again, before coronavirus was a thing, I wouldn't have been surprised. But now he may well be a player that Arteta looks to keep around because he probably wouldn't get the money he would have wanted for him in the first place, and he also offers a lot of versatility in the squad. So he might keep it around now. But yeah, he's certainly fallen out of favour. There's no doubt about that. You just have to look at his appearances and can work out that it's happened. And to be honest, Arteta's not been secretive of the fact either. He's openly admitted it, that he wants to see more from Maitland-Niles. Ruel says, is the George Lewis deal done? I'm not sure. He also asked about Tiger Smalls. I'm not sure where we are with the Tiger Smalls. I know he came in for his trial, but I don't know if that's been taken up or not, if it's been pursued. But in terms of George Lewis, last I'd heard about the fact it was all pretty much in the hands of the contract team. He came in, he impressed in his trial. People at Arsenal were hoping to get that deal done. Feel he's got something, and they could get some potential at, raise that potential level and possibly turn him into a player over the next few years. But it all depends on getting the contract signed and agreed to it. But I can't imagine it's that difficult a deal to get done. So last I heard on the fact it was very, very close to happening, and it was just a case of getting the contracts going through the contract people and the lawyers. So we'll have to wait and see if something when something gets announced over that. San says, hi Charles, hope you're doing well. Could you please tell your thoughts on Aubameyang and Saka's contract extensions? Also, could you tell us about Arsenal's transfer plans post the pandemic? San, I've already talked earlier about this, about Arsenal's transfer plans post the pandemic and the financial implications of it, how difficult some of it could be. So I won't go over that again because I've also already really covered it earlier in this video. But in terms of Saka and Aubameyang, last I heard, not really been any updates, I'm afraid, which is a bit of a shame because you kind of look at these last 2 months and think it could have been a real good opportunity to try and get those things sorted. But nothing doesn't seem like it's moved on. I think Arsenal are still calm about Saka's situation. They're still believing that they will get him to put pen to paper and get him to extend. They absolutely want him to stay. They'd be loath to lose him. I think Saka would like to stay because he's playing non-stop at a very, very high level, and Arsenal's his club, always has been. He's been here since he was a kid, well, he still is a kid. But so I think you're just going to have to wait. The negotiations going on with that. Aubameyang one is difficult. It's a tough situation. I think before this all happened in terms of coronavirus, I think Aubameyang was looking very, very likely to leave this summer. But now it's not quite so clear cut because he might not be getting the contract offers he would have wanted before because clubs can't afford it because of the financial situation. Clubs might be willing to wait a year to try and get him on a free transfer. And if clubs do bid for him, they're not going to be bidding the sort of money that Arsenal would have been hoping for, even though he's only got a year left on his contract. So it's really up in the air, the Aubameyang situation. And it's really going to be down to Arsenal to determine if a bid comes in, if it's worth it, if he doesn't sign, because he hasn't signed yet. Obviously, I think now that football's beginning to start up again, I think you're going to have to... I'd be surprised if something happens between now and football starting again in terms of a renewal. I think Arsenal are probably going to have to try and revisit that in the small pre-season, off-season that we're going to have before 2021 starts. So nothing seems to have moved forward from that. Certainly nothing that I've heard from anyone that I've spoken to suggests that Aubameyang is definitely about to put pen to paper and sign a new contract. It's not saying he's not. It might be happening very much behind closed doors, and it could happen. But I think it's a difficult one, Aubameyang. Everything that's gone on with coronavirus is certainly affected where Arsenal would have hoped they could have been with their captain in terms of contract talks, and because he's on about 180 grand, 200 grand at the moment. Aubameyang's second highest earner behind Ozil. If he was going to extend, he'd want more than that. And Arsenal are in a situation where they've suddenly been asking their players to take pay cuts because of the coronavirus, and want those pay cuts to last into next year. And so how do they offer a new contract at that sort of on those sort of terms when they're trying to get players to reduce their wages? So it's a really difficult situation that they've got to try and deal with. in terms of their captain, in terms of their striker, and it's not ideal because you don't want him going into his final year of his contract because A, you don't know what his mindset's going to be in that final year, and B, you're risking losing your player, your striker on a free transfer coming in, straight after you've lost Aaron Ramsey on a free transfer. It's a dreadful situation Arsenal got in, especially with Raul coming out not long ago saying, these days are over. If players haven't signed after 2 years, with 2 years left on the deal, they're going to be sold. Well, that hasn't happened, and we're back in the same situation again with one of Arsenal's star strikers. Well, with Arsenal's star striker, so it's not ideal. As the days go by with no end to the speculation, do you think Partey deal is edging closer? Says Dot. There is no name. It's just a full stop or a it looks like a full stop. So can't say what your name is. Apologies. I don't think it's edging closer. I think we're going to have to wait until the summer because, like I've said already earlier on this video, I think if Partey is going to sign for Arsenal, which Arsenal would very much like, they're going to have to come. They're going to have to do some sort of creative deal with Atletico because they're not going to be able to just go and drop 50 million off it La Liga headquarters and pay that release clause because it's not going to happen. Arsenal don't have that money, and so if they are going to get Partey, if they are going to somehow get this deal done, I think you're going to have to look at some sort of swap deal or some creative sort of deal, and that's not out of the that's definitely not out of the realms of possibility. We've already spoken about Lacazette, a player that Atletico like. Is there something that could possibly be done there? We'll have to wait and see. But in terms of it edging closer, no, I wouldn't say that. I think there's still an awful long way to go. If Arsenal are going to sign Thomas Partey in the summer, then we're still an awful long way from that happening. Rasmus asks, in all seriousness, how do you think Martinelli would do as our main striker? Performance-wise and mentality, do you think he is ready? If not, what is he lacking? I just think he's lacking experience. I think it's an awful lot. Like Martinelli's been fantastic this season. What a signing he's been. What a talent he is. I don't think he'd be overawed or asked to be the main striker for next season. I just think you're putting an awful lot on a young kid's shoulders if you're going to try and send him into next season as Arsenal's main striker. He's only been in England for a year, not played much Premier League football in his first season. He played an awful lot of cup football, not masses of Premier League football. And to sell Aubameyang, sell Lacazette or something like that and go in with Martinelli as your main striker, it's a huge risk for a club of the size of Arsenal, and he's putting an awful lot of pressure on Martinelli's shoulders. And he's shown already that he doesn't really struggle with pressure and he can deal with it and go tackle it head on. But I just think you've got to protect the kid as well. It's asking a lot, and it could do some lasting damage if you're basically resting your hopes of your goals all season on an 18-year-old kid from Brazil who's only had 1 year in England, still doesn't really speak the language. So no, I think that's my issue with going in with Martinelli as the main striker. What else we got? Premium edition says, Charles, in your opinion, who should the club offload and why? Interesting one. Like I've talked about Lacazette, and I really like Lacazette. I think he's been really unfairly treated, and some of the criticism he's got this season has been really, really harsh. In my view, he was deservedly player of the season last season. He got 19 goals, 14 assists. You don't do that if you're not a very good player. He's a very good striker, very good number 9. He brings a lot to Arsenal, I think. He's had a difficult season, really, which you can trace back to that injury he got against Lyon in the Emirates Cup, right, the week before the season started. He's just never been able to recover from that. He's always been chasing his form, chasing his fitness. But I do think if there is something to be done with Thomas Partey, then I think with Atletico Madrid for Thomas Partey, I think if Lacazette is key to that, then I think he's expendable, if you see what I mean. He's only got 2 years left on his contract. Again, there's been no signs that there's going to be an extension or he's going to sign a new deal, and you don't want to get into another situation of going into another summer with a player with only 1 year left on his contract. So I think if something could be done for Lacazette this season, this summer, especially if it means it could help signing Thomas Partey, then I think that's something that Arsenal should probably explore. You look at Sia Kolasinac as well. I think if Arsenal can get him off the books, I think that's a good option. I love Kieran Tierney. I know he's got injury problems, but Saka's already shown he can cover at left back. So I think Kolasinac is probably expendable as well. Maitland-Niles, again, I think if you get a decent bid in for Maitland-Niles, as much as I like him, I think it'd probably be better for his career if he goes out and starts playing. He's a very good squad player and he brings a lot of versatility to the squad. So, it's not, I don't think it's definite that Arsenal should sell him, but I think if an acceptable offer came in, then it's something that they should probably look at. But you've got to remember as well, as I've been saying, players coming in, it's going to be difficult to bring a lot of players in. So you can't look at just slashing your squad at the moment, because you need all those players. And if you're not going to be able to go in and bring in a load of them, then you've got to sort of balance it out a little bit. One thing I do think is Arsenal in a very good, strong position is they've got some excellent youngsters coming through, and I think this season's going to really help with that. Nketiah's played loads, Saka's played loads, Martinelli's played loads, Joe Willock's come on. Smith Rowe's been great at Huddersfield since he's been on loan, and he's going to come back in the summer. So Arsenal got some really good, talented kids. Jordi Tutu as well. I think everyone forgets him. We've not really seen him at all around the first team at Arsenal, but he's a very good player, very good right back, and he's doing well over in Germany at the moment. He scored last weekend, and I think he might come into the squad next season potentially, and certainly if Maitland-Niles goes, he could provide some sort of cover on the right hand side as well. So I think the youngsters are going to be a big boost for Arsenal next season. That might allow them to sell on a few players. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Lucas Torreira this summer. Such a good player, made such a massive impact when he signed, but I think Unai Emery didn't help Torreira. Obviously played him out of position, moving him around. I think Torreira lost his confidence a little bit, lost his sharpness, and he's always been struggling to get that back. And he's not even nailed down a starting spot under Mikel Arteta since Arteta came in. And I know that Torreira was keen on a move away in January. Arteta convinced him, said, look, we want you to stay here. And so Torreira did, and he was happy to do that. But I wouldn't, if an offer comes in from Italy for Torreira, I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes to sort of push through that move. Say Napoli, who've got a long-standing interest in him. I think he likes Italian football. He sort of fits into the culture over there, and he enjoys it. I'm not quite sure he enjoys it quite so much in London. It'd be a real shame to lose him, real shame, because I like him. I think he can offer an awful lot. But again, if a big bid came in for him, especially if Arsenal are trying to get Thomas Partey done, then it might, give them some cash to try and sweeten the Atletico deal if they need to, and it might be something. But I certainly wouldn't stand here waving the flag saying sell Torreira, because I like him as a player. But it might be something that Arsenal look to do. At IshFC asked, do you think once the league gets up and running, Arsenal might nick a European place? It's going to be tough, but it's certainly, it's not out of equation. It's going to be very, very tight. I think playing behind closed doors is going to help Arsenal, to be honest, because let's face it, they're dreadful away from home. They seem to crumble amid this sort of atmosphere and intensity of playing away from home. But so playing behind closed doors without fans might actually help them when they go away. So they could easily do it. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Manchester City's European ban. That's obviously coming up fairly soon. I think it's next month. The date's been set that they're going to have the hearing in the Court of Arbitration for Sport. And if City are thrown out of Europe, even if it's reduced and they're only thrown out for a year, then that's certainly going to help Arsenal's chances of doing it. One thing that's not going to help their chances is Tottenham. Obviously, they were really struggling at the time of the suspension. They had loads of injuries to Son, to Kane, but all these players are back now and fit, and so Tottenham are going to be strong. As the season starts up again, they're going to be back to full strength, where they were really suffering before. And Tottenham obviously a place ahead of Arsenal. So, it's going to be difficult. They've given themselves a lot of work to do with the dreadful start to the season they've had. But they could certainly nick a European place. It's there for the taking. I still think Champions League is pushing it. There's too many clubs ahead of them, too many teams ahead of them, and they've got a bit too much of a gap to claw back. But in terms of getting a European spot, then that's absolutely still on the agenda. And obviously, if the FA Cup starts up again, which hopefully it will, I hope it doesn't get thrown out, because if they're bringing back the Premier League, they must be able to find a way of bringing back the last few rounds of the FA Cup. And Arsenal are in the quarter-final with a game against Sheffield United to come, so they've got a good chance in the FA Cup as well, which is a European spot if they go on and win that. Andrew asks, is his transfer window going to be more about consolidation rather than transfers? Well, yes, I've already covered that as well, Andrew, so I'm sure you've already heard my answers on that. I think it absolutely is going to be about consolidation and working out exactly what they have to do and how they're going to do it. So there's not going to be a load of cash thrown around. It's going to be very, very careful planning in terms of the transfer market. If Arsenal manage to find clubs to make some sales, let us say we sell Torreira, Socrates, Lacazette, Kolasinac and Mickey, do you think that these funds will be available to strengthen the squad with signings such as Partey, Upamecano, Disasi, given a delicate situation? Well, look, any money helps. It's going to help in terms of if you bring money in, then it's going to help. But a lot of that money is going to be going at the moment to cover the wage bill, because the wage bill is costing so much each month, and Arsenal haven't got any revenue coming in to cover it. So they're just basically it's so much of Arsenal's money. The money they're losing month on month is going into the players' pockets, even with the wage cut. So a lot of the funds that are coming aren't going to just come in and go straight away go in the transfer kit. It's going to be come in and being used to try and protect the club through this really difficult financial crisis. And it is, I can't say it enough just how serious this is financially and how much of an effect it's having on Arsenal. It really is. So I just think you've got to approach this transfer window with a real lowered sense of expectation, because it is really delicate situation finances-wise. And so any money that does come in, it's not necessarily going to go on being spent on bringing players in. It's going to go on protecting safeguarding the club through this crisis. So yeah, honestly I think Upamecano, I'd be stunned if Arsenal can get that done. Look, they like him. They would love to get it done if they possibly could. They explored it last summer, didn't happen. But just the finances involved, the competition involved as well in terms of other clubs that want him, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to get him in. Disasi is certainly a player they like, they've looked at, but given the situation as well, Pablo Mari is here. I think that's going to be a lot cheaper deal to do. They like Mari. Arteta likes Mari. He wanted a left-sided centre-back. He got him in. I think the fact that Mari came, once he was fit and up to speed, Mari came straight into the side, says an awful lot in terms of how Arteta views Pablo Mari. So as much as they would like Disasi, and they've spoken about him, they've watched him an awful lot, that if it comes down to the crunch of having to spend 15 million to get Disasi, or spending less than that, about sort of 7 million to turn Mari's move permanent, then they'll be probably looking at Mari. But if they can sell a few players and they have extra funds, then that obviously might help with get Disasi in as well. Because centre-back's certainly a priority for Arsenal. Centre-back, central midfield, and then you've got to work out what's happening with the strikers and their contract situations. And you've got to remember as well that William Saliba's coming in, which is a big boost for Arsenal. They've already got that transfer done. Obviously, it will happen last year, but the fact that he's actually coming in, he's finished his loan at SCN, and they're going to have him to use next season is a massive bonus for Arsenal. It really is. What else we got here? Dries says, if Partey comes in, another one about Partey. If Partey comes in, would you play him with Xhaka or with Torreira, and would you sell the other one that doesn't play to free up funds? I think it's more likely if Partey comes in that he ends up playing with Xhaka rather than Torreira. I think Mikel Arteta really rates Xhaka and what he can bring to the team. He worked so hard to keep him in January and to turn Xhaka's sort of thinking around after what happened with the fans in that game against Crystal Palace, and he rates him. He really thinks he can bring a lot to the club, and I think Torreira may well be the player if a midfielder is to go. If Partey does arrive somehow, and a midfielder needs to go because of that, I'd be more inclined to say it's going to be Lucas Torreira than Granit Xhaka. Dries also asks, if Mari's loan becomes permanent, are we going to try and sign another centre-back, or do we view Mari and Saliba as good enough? Well, it's tough to ask me if I view Mari and Saliba as good enough, because I just haven't seen enough of them. Everyone I talk to about Saliba says he's very exciting, real prospect. People that opinions I really value. He's fantastic in one-on-one duels. People rarely get the better of him in those sort of situations. He's really powerful. He's going to add a lot to the team, but he's very young. You've got to remember that, still a young kid. And Mari, not really got too much experience, despite his excellent time with Flamengo. In European football, certainly at top level European football, hasn't got really any experience at all. So and I've only seen him in a few games, other than the rest of you, and looking at him on YouTube when the deal was being done. So I like what I've seen with Mari. I think he's he's got a lot about him. I think he ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of the sort of centre back that Mikel Arteta likes and how he wants his defenders to play. So I think that Arteta will be happy to have that, and you've still got Salih, you've still got Socrates, you've still got David Luiz, you've still got Rob Holding, although I think Holding will probably go out on loan next season. Callum Chambers to come back. So there are options there at centre back. Whether Mari and Saliba are going to be his first choice at the start of the season, I'd be surprised. I think you're probably going to you might ease Saliba in to things rather than throwing him straight into the centre back role. I think you might probably still use David Luiz next season, certainly at the beginning of it, and ease Saliba in alongside maybe even Luiz to have that extra experience. So I'd be surprised if you're looking at Mari and Saliba as a first choice centre back pairing at the start of next season, but Arteta certainly likes both of them, and I think Saliba is a real talent, and we'll see him in the starting 11 sooner rather than later. Well, everyone, I think that's pretty much it for now. I've gone through most of your questions. Thank you very much for sending them in. As always, apologies once again if I haven't got around to answering your question. It's not because I've ignored you, it's because I've already basically given an answer in a previous question, so I don't want to just go through the whole thing totally repeating myself, although, to be honest, the amount of questions about Thomas Partey on here, I have repeated myself a fair amount, so apologies for that. But, yeah, as I said, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I will do another one again in the near future. So please do stay safe, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe.